So it's been a day. I've slept on it. We've all slept on it. Man United beat Chelsea 2-1 at Old Trafford yesterday in horrendous fashion. But who was really to blame for this farcical game? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And today, that means, like I say, when I finished doing my watch along for the game yesterday, I literally just hit record on the camera and gave my visceral, direct, emotional review of the game as I was feeling in the moment after having watched it directly straight away. So now I've had a sleep, I've had a little nappy nap, and a day to kind of consider it and stuff. And also, I've spent a bit of time today looking around the news, the rags, people's opinions, and more importantly, the post-match presses, which for me is quite telling about the things we should be happy about and the things that we should be worried about. But guys, before we get into it, if you're enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. And there's a lot of roastable stuff going on at the moment, man, so let her rip. Right, so I'm going to start off with, as I said, the post-match presses, right, were quite polarising for me, actually, because there was some stuff I really appreciated in it, and there was some stuff that annoyed me even more. Now, I didn't watch these yesterday. I just wanted to take a bit of time away from the game and whatever, but I've gone back into it today, and I'm looking into it, and this is what I have gleaned. So the post-match presses were largely centred around Enzo Maresca and goal scorer Trevor Chalobah. Starting with the Maresca stuff, he just completely declined to give any insight at all into why he made the changes that he made. And I would kind of take that as almost an admission of guilt, if I'm being completely honest, because no one understands why he made the changes we changed. The only change he really gave an excuse for, and it wasn't necessarily the player he brought on, but the player he took off, was Cole Palmer. Now, Cole Palmer supposedly was not feeling great leading up to the game, but said that he really wanted to play and he was willing to push through the pain or whatever to play the game and try and get a result. And supposedly he was starting to feel something, which is why he got taken off. Now, I don't know, it all looked a bit weird, man. To be fair, Cole Palmer didn't look absolutely screwing when he came off, so there is probably some merit in that, to be honest. And at the end of the day, we absolutely have to protect him. We are a bit light in attacking midfield. Do you know what I mean? If we're going to continue this specific formation that we're using, Enzo Fernandez is not a solid option long-term in that position for me. Esteval Williams, 18, and we can't put that much pressure on him to just completely take up that role right now. And Facundo Buonanotte is kind of still a bit of a question mark, right? Like, so I expect to see him in the Lincoln game. But taking Cole Palmer off made sense just for that in any situation, whether it be we're a man down and we're losing 2-0, or whether it be, we're actually winning and stuff and he just comes off early because he's feeling something. Like, you can't gamble with Cole Palmer's fitness because it's a long season, right? And we are literally still right at the start of it. So fair enough to that. But what he didn't explain is, yeah, okay, it makes sense when your goalkeeper comes off, you've got to put someone else on, and taking Esteval Williams off did make sense in that regard. Okay, that's fine. But if you know Cole Palmer's got a problem, why didn't you take Cole Palmer off at that point and instead of Esteval Williams, right? How does one add up to the other? How can you be like, oh, Cole Palmer was already struggling and wanted to come on and do his best and get the result for the team, but then at the same time you're forced into a substitution in 4 minutes and you leave him on the pitch and you take Esteval Williams off instead? Like, at the time when Esteval came off, it made sense to me. He was the youngest, the least experienced, there was a lot of pressure, whatever, but Esteval Williams isn't carrying any potentially long-term injuries as far as we know. Do you know what I mean? And he had a lot of energy and he does have a lot of flair, and maybe that ultimately he might have seen 60, 70 minutes of that game and things might have been completely different had we have had a consistent, fit attacking option on the pitch. So already there's some mild amount of hypocrisy in the change itself. Do you know what I mean? If you're coming out in the press, in the post-match presser, being like, oh yeah, well, we took Cole Palmer off because he wasn't feeling very good at the start of the game, and he started feeling something. It's like, right, okay, you know that, then why did you not take him off when you were forced into taking someone off? That's one thing. And then the next thing, Neto for Tosin Adarabioyo. Like, what are you talking about? You're literally just completely handcuffing our team. So you've got a half-cocked Cole Palmer and an absolutely knackered João Pedro at Old Trafford with a man down when we haven't won there in 13 years. Like, there's just zero excuses or explanations for any of this. And like I said, the thing that annoyed me in the presser is he didn't offer any excuses. and zero at all. And do you know what he said as well? This is another thing that annoyed me about Maresca in the presser. He was like, "Oh yeah," and then Man U went half down, and the flow of the game changed, and we could get back in control. And it's like, yeah, you could, and you point blank refused to put another attacking player on until it was basically too late, and you were scraping the bottom of the barrel at the end of the game to try and get something out of it. So why at half time do you not bring at least one attacking player on, right? You had a fit Garnacho, a fit Jamie Gittins, and even a fit Tyreek George, who you ended up bringing on later. But you were like, no, I'm going to stick with 5 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 1 attacker. It just made absolutely zero sense to me at all. And obviously because Cole Palmer got replaced for Andre Santos. So why did you put Andre Santos on for when you took Cole Palmer? If Cole Palmer came off because of the injury and you didn't bring him off because we were completely getting cut open, why did you not use that opportunity to put an attacker on? Do you know what I mean? Like a Garnacho who played 49 games in the Premier League last season and got 21 combined goals and assists. It just belies any sort of logic. And yes, like many of you, I am a sofa manager, right? We all sit here on our sofas watching the game from a screen, and I'm not saying I mentioned this in the video yesterday. I'm 100% not saying I've got the manager chops to know these decisions. But if you're going to make these absolute wild decisions that don't pay off and offer zero explanation for them, what do you expect, man? If he'd have even come out and said something as little as, we were getting dominated by Man United's attack because we were the man down. So I decided to reinforce the defence in the midfield and trust João Pedro to try and get something on the counter. Not even as far as that. Not even the most basic explanation that you might have assumed would happen anyway. So for me, it was disappointing that Maresca made these changes in the game that he made anyway. I haven't even gone into the Tyreek George one. I talked about that in my video yesterday. Go and check it out if you want my visceral reaction. But also, I think it's a bit cowardly, man. I think it's a bit cowardly to come out and just to say, oh, yeah, well, when you're a man down in 4 minutes, you've got to make a change. All right, yeah, okay, cool. You had to make 1 change, but you didn't. You made 2, and you put another defender on. What are we doing? Are we just going to sit behind the ball for 90 minutes and hope for the best when they've still got all of their 3 attackers on? Because at the end of the day, those changes weren't made thinking, it's all right, Man United will get a red card later. You literally made those choices thinking this is going to be it for the entire game, because that is the only reasonable thing to do. It is impossible to predict that Casemiro would have ended up getting sent off as well, and that can't have been part of your game plan. Fair play to Andre Santos, because I'm loving his character, man. Do you know what I mean? The sit down against Jackson in the Bayern Munich game, and the annoying players to the point where he's getting them sent off. Fair play, love that. A lot of scrappy character from Andre Santos. Andre Santos did reasonably well as well. Do you know what I mean? And it's not even pulling down the likes of Andre Santos, who obviously did his best he could, but he's not an attacking midfielder. He's not a winger. He's not a centre forward. He's not anything like that. He's ultimately deep lying midfielder who has a knack for and an eye for the occasional goal. That's not going to win you a game against Man United at Old Trafford, because there's so much more going on in an event like this than just the players that are on the pitch and the managers in the dugout. There is the history, the feeling, the vibe, the crowd, the fans. Do you know what I mean? There's so many of these intangible moments in a big game like this, intangible qualities, that affect how the game goes. And we know this because we haven't won at Old Trafford in 13 years. And out of those 13 years, we've almost always had the better team and largely the better manager. Not always. There's a couple of examples where things haven't gone that well. But at the same time, we've had the better 11s for the most part over those last 13 years, and we keep losing at Old Trafford, right? So what that tells you is there's something going on there that is mental. Do you know what I mean? Not mental as in crazy, a mentality thing. So, yeah, ultimately, disappointed with Maresca for the changes and for what I consider to be a reasonably cowardly response in the press. And I haven't seen a huge amount else for it either. I will dig into some stuff to see if I can find any sort of justification, because I would just love to know what was going on behind his head, man. And like I say, if he uses this as a massive lesson learned, do you know what I mean? As a massive lesson learned, because how often does your goalkeeper sent off? Almost never. Do you know what I mean? It's not even a once a season thing. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very, very rare that your goalkeeper gets sent off. So I'm not necessarily saying learning about how to deal with your goalkeeper sending off, because that's always going to be difficult. But ultimately, he panicked. Do you know what I mean? He panicked and threw loads of defensive players on and took the teeth out of the tiger. So. Yeah, man, just a bit disappointed in Maresca for that. What I will move on to now is Trevor Chalobah. Trevor Chalobah in the presses, right? I really respected what he had to say, in particular on the Sky one. No excuses. We didn't do well enough. Do you know what I mean? And obviously Trevor Chalobah got the goal as well. So he is one of the players that is kind of shielded from criticism in this whole event because he played pretty well throughout the entire game. Obviously got the goal. And in the post-match presser, in the interview he did with Sky, I really loved something that he said. The interviewer mentioned something about being a young team. And Trevor Chalobah said, we can't treat ourselves as kids anymore. Almost everyone in this team has got 2 years of Premier League experience, and I absolutely love that, man, because that's the truth. Age is only age when you're fresh. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, look at Trent Alexander-Arnold and Reece James, and these guys have been playing in the Premier League since they were teenagers, do you know what I mean? And they're still not old now. They're still 23, 24, 25, whatever, still not even getting into their physical primes, but they've got loads of Premier League experience. So you can't just say, oh, yeah, well, he's really young. And it's like, yeah, he might be really young. Raheem Sterling was a great example. Do you know what I mean? Raheem Sterling was playing Premier League football since the age of 17. So by the time that he was 21, 22, he wasn't a kid anymore. Do you know what I mean? It was like he was an experienced Premier League operator that knew how to do it. So I really appreciated that from Trevor Chalobah, because that is the truth, right? We're really, really quickly getting to the point where we can't just hang on we've got the youngest squad in the Premier League and the team's full of kids, because that was fair a year or two ago when they were not only young but they were fresh and had zero Premier League experience. These guys are expected to play in the Champions League now. They've gotten into the Champions League. They've beaten European champions PSG in the Club World Cup. They have experience playing at the highest level. And you can't get into the Champions League and then at the same time come back and be like, oh yeah, well, it's all right because we're young or whatever. Now, I'm not saying this is coming from the team, but in general, I do agree with the premise that it's easy to say that we've got a team full of youngsters because a lot of the players are young. But look at João Pedro. João Pedro's been in the Premier League for 3 years now. Do you know what I mean? Cole Palmer has got 2 years and he's in his third season. Reece James has got like 5 years in the Premier League. Trevor Chalobah has got like 3 or 4 years in the Premier League. And Tosin Adarabioyo has got years in the Premier League. Wesley Fofana, in my review, actually, he did pretty well yesterday, and that's actually really promising because what that gives us now is another solid centre-back option. He was making really good tackles and getting all over the place yesterday. Limped off, which we need to be worried about, but if it wasn't serious, Wesley Fofana's good, and he's been injured a lot, so maybe I don't count him in that as much, but at the end of the day, he was playing in the Premier League at Leicester. Do you know what I mean? And he was really, really, really good. So that's another option. Moises Caicedo is in his fourth year of Premier League football now because he had a great season with Brighton. We bought him. This is his second year with us. He's in his like third or coming on to the fourth season in the Premier League as well. We're not just talking about kids anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, Esteval Willian, Facundo Buonanotte, some of these other guys, yes, they are still young. Yes, they are still untested. Even Alejandro Garnacho, man. Alejandro Garnacho, maybe 21, whatever. But at the end of the day, he's got 3-4 years Premier League experience. He played 49 games last season. And it still blows my mind that he didn't get brought on. That's another thing that, I didn't think Garnacho was ready. Do you know what I mean? He just completely sidestepped the fact that he brought Tyreek George on instead of Garnacho, even though Garnacho had been spoken to and given instruction. Tyreek George is one of these players that we can look at and say, you're a young player. Do you know what I mean? Because he's 19, nearly 20, but he's barely got any Premier League experience because he played a bit in the Conference League and obviously he came in and had a big moment in the Fulham game at the back end of last season, don't get me wrong, but he's not an experienced Premier League operator compared to someone like a Garnacho. Jamie Gittins gets a bit more of a pass because he's been playing in the Bundesliga and yes, he is still quite young. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just as black and white as how old is the player. For me, the experience they've got playing at the top level really feeds into that as well. And the majority of the players on the pitch yesterday and the majority of the players that you would expect to see something wrong from aren't, yes, they're young, but they're Premier League experienced operators now. So we've got a young team as an excuse for capitulations like this, man. We absolutely can't. And my ultimate point on this is I really appreciated Trevor Chalobah saying that. I think that was good. He's becoming that experienced head. I think he's like nearly 25, something like that, which is one of the older players in the squad. Fair play to him for coming out and being candid and honest and not trying to shield anyone from the, we're not, we're young players or whatever. Like, I appreciate his candor and I appreciate him coming out and being open and honest. And that's absolutely what we need in our Premier League players in general. this is just a part 2 to the rant yesterday, isn't it? At the end of the day, this is just turning into a part 2. But I am really disappointed, man. I said in my match preview, if we get a draw, I'll be disappointed. If we lose, I'll be furious. And I am furious. And I'd have been furious if we'd have had 11 men on the pitch and played our hearts out and lost. But to lose in the manner that we did, with all these mad substitutions and completely like the antithesis of everything that Enzo Maresca has shown us about him before, is that he's adaptable and he's tactically astute. He panicked yesterday, man. That's the only sort of thing I can see for it, is that he panicked yesterday. And he even looked a little bit shell-shocked in his interview as well. Do you know what I mean? A bit wide-eyed, like he was a bit like, maybe he felt like he was under pressure. Now, what I will say, just to start wrapping this video up, I mentioned it yesterday as well, I'm not as hyperbolic as to say Maresca out. Do you know what I mean? And I know a lot of you guys will maybe feel like, you know, we want to go back to having like a quality manager, and obviously we feel the same way about centre backs, goalkeepers. Do you know what I mean? Is just with, you know, Blue Coat aren't going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And Enzo Maresca's been given a 5-year deal, and this isn't going to be like the Graham Potter thing. He's done much better than Graham Potter has. 2 losses on the bounce is really difficult. Do you know, just one quick little thing that annoys me as well. We have just given Ruben Amorim his first back-to-back wins at Old Trafford since he started. What is it with us, man? We always do this. I remember Arsenal were having a really bad time for a while, and Chelsea was the game that set them back in, you know, in order on a run of good games and stuff again. It's like, why are we this anti-bogey team? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like if you're a team that's been having a hard time and you're coming up against Chelsea, we'll give you a win and then you can start doing good after that. What is that, man? What is that? But anyway, you know, I'm definitely ranting a little bit now. But tell me what you think about it in the comments, guys. Who does the blame fall to? For me, okay, so first Sanchez. I haven't even mentioned Bailey in this whole entire video, which is mad. But Sanchez, absolutely to blame for this. And I do think in the same way it was the beginning of the end for Nicholas Jackson when he got that red card at Newcastle, I do believe we will see an expedited exit for Sanchez, maybe January, definitely the end of next season. Like for all of the progress he's made to do something like that. You know, I've done a couple of comparison and stats videos about Sanchez, and his biggest issue is errors that lead to goals. This is even worse than that, man. This is worse than an error that leads to a goal, because you can come back from that. He literally changed the makeup of the entire game. And the one thing I will agree with Maresca in his post-match presser was that once Sanchez gets sent off, all of your game plan goes out the window and you have to just adapt at the moment. And unfortunately, what that showed us is Maresca didn't adapt in the right way. Sanchez absolutely to blame. And like I say, I would expect to see some sort of expedited move for Mike Maignan in January now, because that's when he can sign his pre-contract agreement. And I'm sure if we offer them the same 5 to 8 mil that we offered him in the summer before, then we'll probably get him. Yeah, Sanchez to blame, Maresca to blame. A lot of people are talking about the sporting directors. I don't really think you can link this to the striker or centre-back situation, because we had a striker on the bench, and we had, by the end of the game, like, you know, in the middle of the game, we had 3 centre-backs on the pitch for the entire thing. So I don't necessarily think that the sporting directors decision to not go out and replace Levi Colwill and not to go and replace Liam Delap, I don't think this specific loss pertains to them in particular. So I'll reserve judgment on the sporting directors until a little bit later, when we start seeing the issues. Do you know what I mean? If more massive issues come up because of this. This, for me, Enzo Maresca had the tools that he needed to get back into this game when they went 10 men down. He had attackers on the bench and he chose not to use any of them. And the one that he brought in at the end has basically not really done anything for Chelsea since that Fulham game where he scored in Tyreek George. So for me, we actually had the tools that we needed to get back into, get a draw out of, or even maybe win this game, and Maresca point blank refused to use them. So, you know, like I say, for me, Sanchez and Maresca 100% take the blame for this game. But tell me what you think in the comments, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Let's look forward to the Lincoln game, because we're going to win that one, right? We can't do a United against Grimsby. If Chelsea lose to Lincoln, then we're in full-blown crisis mode. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to be a pretty comfortable win. And I will tell you why in my match preview that is coming out in a few days. Nice one, guys. I hope you're all having a wicked day. I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.